KNBR, the sports leader. Your faithful fix with your host Larry Krueger begins now.
And away we go. Welcome. It's 49er Forecast on a Saturday. Happy Thanksgiving weekend to all of you. Welcome to Saturday, November the 29th, and welcome to the sports leader, Larry Krueger, with you on a Saturday for 49er Forecast. For the next hour, we'll talk Niner ball. Getting you ready for the big showdown in Cleveland. And I was talking to a guy in Cleveland the other day, and I'm like, man, what's it going to look like on Sunday? What's that weather going to be like? And he's like, oh, it's going to be just like today. I'm like, oh, great. Well, what's it like today? He made it sound like all kind of encouraging. It's going to be beautiful, just like today. I'm like, he's like, yeah, 35 to 38, somewhere in there. Icy rain, maybe some snow if the temperatures drop a little bit. Maybe 25 to 35 mile an hour winds. We like to call it a wintry mix. Like, it sounds absolutely awful. And by the way, the Browns practiced in that yesterday, and the 49ers practiced in Northern California on a 50-degree day with no precipitation to speak of. So who is better prepared for the conditions that will be had tomorrow in Cleveland? Probably the Browns. But the Niners are 8-4 and 4-1 in the division, 8-2 in the conference, very much alive as the 7th seed in the NFC playoff picture, a playoff picture that's getting more and more muddied as we go. And then you look across the way at the Browns. The Browns are 3-8, 0-4 in the division, 2-6 in the conference. They got a rookie quarterback making his second start, who completes 41% of his passes. And here we go. It's going to be a lot of Quinshon Judkins. It's going to be a lot of Dylan Sampson. It's going to be a lot of the Browns running the ball, and hopefully it'll be a lot of the Niners running the ball with McCaffrey and Brian Robinson right at this Browns defense. So we're going to get into some keys to the game since it is 49er Forecast. Then I'm also going to talk a little bit this hour about Roger Craig, because I really do believe that we need to come together and push for Roger to make it to the Hall of Fame. It was great to see him on the field, giving McCaffrey a hug last week. And Rodgers just such a quality guy that he won't argue. He's not going to be like Drew Pearson. He's not going to sit there and go, damn it, and make a big stink and embarrass himself. Drew Pearson embarrassed himself, and he kind of shamed everybody into voting for him for the Hall of Fame. Oh, we can't watch Drew Pearson blow a gasket again, so we better get him in there. He kind of whined his way in. Well, guess what? Roger's not going to whine his way in. He's too classy for that. But guys like me are going to make his case. And I've made it before on the radio to John Lund and Dennis Brown and in a past 49er pregame show years ago. And then Mark Craig took it and ran with it and interviewed Eddie D and Joe and Steve and all the Niner greats and is really pushing hard. We need to get Roger Craig in the Hall of Fame. If the late Bill Walsh were still alive, the deal would be done. He would have gotten him in by now because Walsh carried that kind of clout within the sport. He had the ability to do that, but he died early, and unfortunately, Roger's been the guy who has paid the price. The Niners are too underrepresented for a team that dominated the 80s and a good chunk of the 90s. They need to be more represented. I mean, the only 49ers from the 80s that are in offensively are Jerry and Joe. I mean, what the heck? There's all kinds of guys in the Hall of Fame that aren't anywhere close to Roger Craig. Andre Reed is a Hall of Famer. He has no rings. Roger is not, but Andre Reed is. Make that make sense. So we'll get into the Roger Craig Hall of Fame argument and what I think is the best argument for Craig's induction into Canton. And I got to see it happen, man. I got to see it happen. It's got to happen somehow, some way. We got to get Roger Craig into the Hall of Fame. But let's talk about Sunday's game. In this segment, let's talk about Sunday's game. And then Chris Easterling is going to stop by. He covers the Browns, and we'll get a whole Browns breakdown from Chris Easterling, bottom of the hour. But let's talk about keys to victory, because I went through it last night, and I'm looking at all the numbers. I'm looking at some of the Browns, condensed version of their games the last month. Looking at Shador against the Raiders. I'm looking at all the stats for both teams, the injury report. There'll be no Alex Wright in this game. Pretty good defensive end. He's not going to be there for the Browns. It's a break for the Niners. It's an absolute break for the 49ers. Wright's a good defensive end. He's not going to play in this game. So that's a break for the Niners. The Niners also catch another break here because they get a couple injuries. The Browns have a couple of injuries that are of guys that aren't going to play. So like on defense, it's on defense. Aiden Huntington, the rookie from Tulane, really good undersized pass rusher, and Alex Wright, their starting defensive end, left defensive end, opposite Garrett. They're not going to be able to go. So those guys are out of this game. So their defensive line's a little less daunting, little bit less daunting. Not much, but a little. So, but let's get into what I think are the keys to the game. Let's start with the 49ers on offense. Get rid of the ball quickly, like very quickly, like right now, like no 7-step drops and maybe no 5-step drops. Like get rid of it. Get rid of the football. Brock Purdy's not just got to make plays, but he's got to avoid making negative plays. Myles Garrett has 14 and a half sacks in the last 5 games. It's the greatest 5-game stretch of any defensive lineman ever. Think about that for a second. 14 and a half sacks last 5 games. Greatest 5-game stretch in the NFL since sacks became a stat in 1982. Maybe Deacon Jones had a game better than this, but nobody since 1982. I was 12 in 1982. It's been a while. All right. 1982 wasn't just the other day. 14 and a half sacks in the last 5 games. Get rid of the football. This guy's a freak. 6'5", 275, 280, 4.5 speed. Maybe the greatest athlete coming off the edge in the history of the league. I mean, so big, so fast. This guy's like Bruce Smith, but with greater speed. He's like Lawrence Taylor, but with more strength and size, or at least more size. I don't know about strength. LT was ridiculously strong. But Myles Garrett, yeah, get rid of the football. Do not let Myles Garrett ruin your day. Cleveland's got 2 really good young corners. Denzel Ward, they just traded for Tyson Campbell from Jacksonville. Campbell stepped in, has played very well. So they've got 2 big-bodied corners that can play, and they've got a defensive line that can absolutely get after you, and Garrett's the best in the biz. And he's going up against Trent Williams, or is he? We're all banking on, the big showdown, Trent Williams, Myles Garrett. I watched last week's game. They lined him up in the A gap. If I were them, I'd line him up against Brendel and just let him cook in the middle of the Niners offensive line. So they move him around. He often lines up at the right defensive end spot. So often he usually would go up against a guy like Trent Williams, but Trent Williams is a Hall of Famer, and they may just say, "Hey, we'll flip to the other side, let Colton McKivitz have his go. We're going to line him up in the A gap and see if we can, make Jake Brendel's day a bad day." So look for Garrett. Get rid of the football. No negative plays. That's one. That's key number 1. Key number 2 is run the ball. Run the football. You have Christian McCaffrey. You have Brian Robinson. Those are both starting caliber NFL running backs. Run the damn ball. Baltimore averaged 6.1 a carry against this Cleveland team. Get Carson Schlesinger blocked and run the ball. New England ran for 177 yards and 5.1 a carry against this Browns defense. So run the ball. Run the ball against this team. Run the ball, protect your defense, complimentary football, long drives, bad weather. It's going to be a grimy, gritty. We're going to find out about the Niners' grit. How gritty are they? West Coast team, Northern California, Silicon Valley going east in late November, bad conditions, going to beat the Browns in their own backyard. There's a lot of people that doubt the Niners can do it. Show you got some grit. Run the ball. You got 2 great running backs. You got a better run blocking line than you got a pass blocking line. Run the ball. Baltimore did. New England did. But you got to get that rookie Schlesinger, the first pick of the second round. You got to get him blocked. I mean, he'll pile up 15 tackles on you. He's everywhere. Get Schlesinger blocked and run the ball. All right, that's key number 2. Key number 3 on offense is, doesn't matter if you make positive plays. Punt. Play defense. Take the long range view. Don't be impatient. Kyle, this is you. Purdy, this is you. The one thing Kyle and Purdy have in common, they're both impatient. They need more patience here. No negative plays. If it's not going well, then don't exacerbate things and try some wild play on third down. Terrible conditions, punt and play defense. No wild, crazy turnovers, wild play on third down. Get off the field. Don't make this be like, oh, that one play game. Oh, yeah, that one play. The conditions are going to be bad. It's going to be hard to handle the football. I asked Brock this week. I said, do you have any concerns in these conditions of whether you can stand back there and grip it and rip it? And he said, yeah, there are some concerns. And it's always a concern when you're a quarterback in these kinds of conditions. Now, Brock doesn't have tiny little hands. People are like, oh, he's got tiny hands. Joe Burrow's got smaller hands. He's got the exact same size hands as Mahomes. So enough with the small hands. He's got small hands. He doesn't have small hands. He's fine. He's fine. He hasn't done well, though, in wet conditions. He said he will not wear a glove. He said he's never worn a glove, but I don't even know if that's even really true. I think there are examples where he has tried out a glove, but he said he's not going to. So whatever, glove or no glove, I really don't care. You wear mittens for all I care. Just throw the damn football, you know? No excuses. Niners don't have a lot of rules. One of them is don't make any excuses. I don't want to hear any excuses. Number 3, or number 4, I guess it would be, win the game on special teams. I mean, the Niners can honestly say that their special teams unit is on the uptick. Brant Boyer is turning things around. They got a kicker. Well, they had a kicker in Eddie Pinheiro. Now they got another kicker in Matt Gay, who's a veteran. We'll find out how he does in the conditions. But you got a good return guy. You got some guys making tackles on the coverage units. Saron Neal's playing well. You're seeing, Luke Farrell's playing pretty well. They've got a number of Luke Gifford is playing well. I mean, they spent some money on they emphasized special teams exclusively in the offseason, almost over all else. And it is improving. The Jets scored 2 special teams touchdowns against this Cleveland team and beat them 27-20. Do that. Have a punt return. Have a kick return. Win on special teams. The Jets did. Cleveland dominated the Jets. If you look at that box score, Cleveland dominated that game, but the Jets had a kickoff return for a touchdown. Jets had a punt return for a touchdown, and they won the game 27-20. Win on special teams. Win on special teams. That's a key. All right, let's flip the card and talk about the defensive keys. Shedeur Sanders is a young quarterback, and he can move around a little bit in the pocket. He likes to drift. He's not a fast runner, but give him a lot of different pre-snap looks and then rotate into something else post-snap. He's a 41% completion percentage guy. Give him lots of different pre-snap looks. Give him all kinds of simulated pressure. Give him all kinds of different looks with moving bodies and guys, challenging at the line of scrimmage. Give him a bunch of different looks. Busy his head with thoughts, because I think you're going to slow him down doing that. And then you got to pressure him. You got to pressure Shedeur. As I said, he's athletic, but he ain't really fast. This is not Anthony Richardson. This is not Lamar. This is not Steve Young. This is not a mobile quarterback like that level of mobility. He's athletic and he'll drift around in the pocket, but he's not a runner per se. Pressure Shedeur. Pittsburgh had 6 sacks against Cleveland. The Raiders last week only had 1 sack, and Cleveland beat them. Baltimore produced 5 sacks against this Cleveland offensive line. The Jets produced 6 sacks against this Cleveland offensive line. Confuse Shedeur, and you got to somehow, some way, you got to pressure him. If that means you got to run guys at him at linebacker, you got to blitz him, then blitz him. You got to get the ball out of his hands. You can't let him sit back there and feel like, yep, I got this. If he ever feels like he's got this, the Niners and Saleh are not doing their job. He's got to have that feeling of, I don't got this all day. And what are they showing me? And confuse him into some mistakes. Inexperienced quarterbacks make mistakes. Inexperienced quarterbacks are easily sped up. Sped up quarterbacks turn the ball over. Turnovers are your friend. Give this guy a lot of looks and somehow pressure him. It's a big if, because the Niners have not been able to pressure almost anybody. And while all the talk will be about Shedeur tomorrow, the real story is, can the Niners stop the rookie running back duo of Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson? That's real. That's the real question. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is it right here. This is the game in a nutshell. Can you stop Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson? Judkins is 225 pounds. He runs in the 4.4s. He was awesome in college, both at Ole Miss and at Ohio State. Had some problems early this year, as far as off the field issues. Those are all in the rearview mirror, and this guy's running the rock, and he's big and fast, and he's one of those guys you got to get him down on the first level. If he gets to the second level, now it's a little bit of a mismatch. If he gets to the third level, he is running dudes over at 220 pounds, almost 230, 4.4 speed. Quinshon Judkins is what they call a blue chipper. He is really, really good. Dylan Sampson ain't a whole lot worse. He's a hell of a player, too. Tennessee rookie. Last week had a 50-yard catch against the Raiders out of the backfield. I think Dylan Sampson might be the key guy in this game because Shedeur is going to be looking for the safety valve, the dump off, and Dylan Sampson is a great option, especially after last week. He showed them the way. I would expect you're going to see at least a half dozen passes to the flat to Dylan Sampson. And if the Niners can't wrap Sampson, he's going to have big plays. And that's all it's going to take in this game is a couple big plays. Couple big plays to move the ball down the field. And then it's going to be a lot of Judkins, a lot of running between the tackles, a lot of power and in kind of football. So don't let them get explosives in the pass game to Dylan Sampson. The other thing that the Browns possess is they have two really good tight ends. They have a rookie, Harold Fannin, out of Bowling Green. He's a very productive receiver. Cleveland's targeted him 69 times this year. That's second on the entire team to Jerry Jeudy in total targets. So they got to go to Fannin. He's a really good route runner. He's got great hands underneath. And he's a chain mover, man. He's a continuity piece on third down, 3rd and 6, and they're looking to stay on the field. They're going to do some kind of timing route to Harold Fannin. And, the accuracy of Shedeur and the hands of Fannin, it becomes a very difficult cover. Very difficult cover. Fannin had a great day earlier this year against Pittsburgh. He caught 7 balls for 81 yards. They targeted him. They've targeted him as many as 10 times in a game, even though he's a rookie tight end. So you got Harold Fannin, and then you got David Njoku. Njoku's got 45 targets, not as many as Fannin. But Njoku's big and physical. He can block. He can run. He's got good hands. Kind of a blue chipper. Has never really had the big-time production that people envisioned for him coming out of Miami, but he's been a solid NFL tight end. And then there's Jerry Jeudy. And, Jerry Judy's one of those guys that you catch him on the right day, he looks like, why is this guy? What's the big deal? I don't get it. You catch him on the wrong day, and it's like, is this one of the best receivers in football that nobody talks about? I mean, he's got a ton of talent. So there you go. Those are the keys to the game right there. Let's come back and talk a little bit about the Browns with Chris Easterling, and then we'll finish up with some thoughts on how I really am passionate about Roger Craig making it to the Hall of Fame. We'll get into that as well before we get out of here. But up next, Chris Easterling is going to stop by, Browns beat writer, and we'll talk a little bit about the Browns, Kevin Stefanski's Browns. What can we expect to see from them? We'll find out next. It's 49er Forecast on a Saturday on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. Faithful, Larry Kruger's rocking the red and gold as 49ers forecast continues on KNBR, the sports leader.
All right, welcome back to 49er Forecast. Larry Kruger with you on a Saturday on the Sports Leader, getting you ready for the matchup that we're getting tomorrow in Cleveland, where the weather, I'm sure, will not be, let's just say, won't be like Northern California for the boys. And joining us on the UMA guest line to chop it up from the Akron Beacon Journal, a guy who's covered the Browns for a number of years, Chris Easterling, is with us. Chris, thanks a bunch for your time, and thanks for jumping on KNBR.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Larry. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about the weather. What are the Niners walking into Sunday in Cleveland?
Well, you might get about 4 seasons wrapped up into one. Actually, you're not going to hit 4 seasons. You're getting 1 season. You're getting full-on Ohio winter about 3 weeks before we're supposed to get before winter actually begins. There's snow, there's wintry mix, there's rain, there's wind, there's cold. It's going to be a lovely day on the lakefront, and it is certain to change at some point between now and then also, because that's again just the way lakefront lake effect weather works here in Cleveland, Ohio.
Let's talk a little bit about the Browns. They're 3-8, 1-5 on the road, and yet when I look at them, I think, wow, this is going to be a huge test for the 49ers. Why don't we start with Shedeur Sanders, who made his first start last week against the Raiders and got a 24-10 win. He was 11 of 20 for 209 yards. Those numbers don't look incredible, but he did have an incredible 52-yard pass play down the field. He dumped it off in the flat to Sampson. He had a big rumble. Only sacked once, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. What did you think of Shedeur's first start?
We're in a hot take world, so everything has to be awesome or awful. I thought he was fine. I thought he was, I thought the best thing about it was you saw progress. You saw him go from what he did those two quarters against the Ravens, and with a full week of practice, full week of preparation, game plan, all that, he went out against the Raiders and he improved. He took strides forward. He stayed in the pocket more. There were just he was more on target. There was more connected with his offensive teammates. I just think all of that was my biggest takeaway, because if you go through the season with the stat line like he had against the Raiders, nobody's throwing a parade. But again, this is Shedeur Sanders, so nothing has been exactly nuanced in any of the discussions with him. So, but I thought it was well, and that's what I'm fascinated about this week is what does he do with another full week? Obviously, Robert Saleh is going to have a scheme dialed up for him that it's going to be fascinating to see what he does to really throw the rookie off. But all in all, I mean, I expect him to take some shots downfield. I expect him to try to extend plays. I expect him to take a step forward and at least provide some energy to this football team that kind of before last week was really lacking, especially on offense.
How do the fans in Cleveland feel about this? I mean, they had Deshaun Watson. They still have him, but he's hurt. They had Joe Flacco. They traded him to Cincy. They have Dylan Gabriel. They now have Bailey Zappi on the practice squad, and they had Shedeur. I think Pickett might have been there for a while. What have the fans been clamoring for Shedeur since minicamp, or is there a split among the Brown faithful? I mean, how do they? Who's been the guy that the fans want to see?
The guy you're going to see on Sunday.
Okay.
I mean, that's been the guy. I mean, it's not to say that there weren't factions of the fan base. It's like it's degrees. I think there's the rational ones who are like, look, he's a rookie, he's a 5th round pick. We're not going to Joe Montana in his prime, to use a 49er reference.
Sure.
But there's also the over the top fans who have been, that they're not just Browns fans, they're Shedeur fans, they're Colorado fans, they're Dion fans. And they're like, oh, well, he's got to be the starter. He's going to be the greatest things. It's God knows what. So But I think by and large everybody wants to see him because they're intrigued. If nothing else, they're intrigued. Even the ones that aren't the biggest Shooter fans are intrigued. So I think that's where the fan base has been with him. And now they're going to get to see him, and I think they're going to get to see him barring injury the rest of the season because they need to find out once and for all what they have in him before they go into the offseason and then attack that, whether they have to attack that position or how they're going to attack that position in the offseason.
Talk a little bit about Sanders because we saw him at Colorado. He completed a really high percentage at Colorado, like mid-70s, but a lot of that wasn't driving the ball down the field. In the first game against the Raiders, his completion percentage was more like 50%. What do you view? I mean, he's not a great runner per se. He's athletic, but he's not necessarily some speedster. How would you describe his game? Does he want to leave the pocket? Does he want to stay in the pocket? What are his tendencies?
I think that's the thing is he wants to drift. When he came out of Colorado, and while he was at Colorado, he had a tendency he wanted to drift. He wanted to drift backwards, away from the pressure instead of kind of stay within the pocket. And I think that's the thing. From game one, from appearance one to this first start, I thought that's what you saw. Is you saw a guy who played more within the pocket because that's what they want him to do, play within the pocket. But they also don't want him to not be able to. He can extend plays. I think he's a little more athletic than people give him credit for. And I mean, you saw it on the pass to Isaiah Bond, where he kind of extends out, rolls to the right, and fires it downfield. I think that's in his game. I think that's in his bag. I think he can do that. I think they want him to do that, but they want him to be selective with it. It's got to be the right times, and I think that's part of the growth that he's kind of going through is just figuring out when he has to play in the pocket, when he can extend plays, when he just has to get rid of the football. But I think you can say that about every quarterback. But I think at the end of the day, they see a quarterback who can stretch the field because while he doesn't have a strong arm, he's not afraid to take shots. So they want him to take some of those shots. But he's also that, like you say, very accurate. I mean, 72%, I think, was his completion percentage at Colorado. So they want him to do that. They see that as, once he kind of gets connected with this receiving core, which, by the way, is a young receiving core outside of Jerry Jeudy. So, I think there's just a lot of things playing into that completion percentage. They think when it all comes together, there is a guy that can get the ball, complete high percentage pass, complete at a high percentage, and as well as give him some opportunities to take shots deep.
Isaiah Bond's got big time speed. He had some issues before the draft that made him fall, but I mean, otherwise he would have been a second round pick. Judy's got talent. Cedric Tillman's been productive at times. They brought in Malachi Corley from the Jets. What's Corley looking like? Because he was kind of like a mini Debo type player at Western Kentucky for the Hilltoppers. He was kind of a jack of all trades. Use him on gadget plays and around the line of scrimmage. How are the Browns utilizing Malachi Corley?
I think that's the perfect comp. Is they're kind of using him like Debo, like the 49ers use Debo with his best plays have been sort of on jet sweeps, kind of running them, get him in motion and then getting him the ball and letting him kind of run. That I mean, in fact that when they really needed to jumpstart their run game, a lot of times that's what they'll do is that they'll start a series off with the jet sweep to Malachi and let him run. They've used him in the return game. He's had some slants, posts, those sorts of things. So they kind of jack of all trades type of thing with him, and he was a guy they were intrigued with coming out of Western Kentucky, and the Jets sort of gave up on him after a couple of years. So they're definitely they're going to see if they can't get something out of him, and I think they're getting something out of him, but I think there's still more to get.
Let's talk about Stefanski. He's an offensive guy. Tommy Rees is the OC, the former Golden Domer, if I remember correct. He played at Notre Dame once upon a time, and he's got Harold Fannin, who they took in the third round out of the MAC, and Fannin is a hell of a receiver. They already had Njoku, who's probably never really fulfilled all the talent that he's had coming out of Miami way back when. And then they got two really good young running backs. Quinshon Judkins runs in the 4.4s. He's 225 pounds. Dylan Sampson was a tremendously productive back at Tennessee, and he's coming off of his best game where he caught a ball out of the flat and rumbled down the sideline. How do you see the other weapons here? Do they go a lot of 12 personnel and 2 tight ends with Fannin and Njoku? How much of Judkins compared to Sampson will we see?
I think you're going to see a lot more they'll use Samson, and Jerome Ford's questionable right now, so we'll see with the hamstring injury. But you will see Samson a little bit, especially in third down situations. But they want to use Judkins. Judkins is their bell cow, and in a weather game like we're going to look at on Sunday, I expect to see a lot of Judkins. I expect to see a high number of Judkins. They use them out of the Wildcat, or maybe not even the Wildcat, because the quarterback's not actually on the field. They'll use them in the single wing when they get in short yardage, especially goal line situations. So they're going to use a lot of Judkins. They're going to, I would expect 20 carries at least for Judkins, multiple tight ends. That's what Stefanski loves, and Tommy Reese does as well. He did it both as the OC at Alabama and Notre Dame. So I think you just heavy tight ends, heavy run game, and take your shots, and at least in a game like this where the weather conditions are what they're expected to be.
I'm looking at some of the splits. It says the Browns play a lot of 11 personnel with 3 wides, 1 back, 1 tight end, maybe 75% 11 personnel. Do you think with the snowy, wintry conditions that they may play a little less 3 wides in this game?
Yeah, I would imagine. And some of that 11 personnel is actually a guy like Fannin or Njoku, especially Fannin. They'll line him out in the slot. They'll move him around the formation, so it's not a true. It's I guess it's 11 personnel in formations, but it's a
12.
second time. It's 12. I mean,
yeah.
it's in that regard. So,
right.
But I would expect in this game, they're going to go and they're going to let that's what they did against Miami. You saw them run the ball, high percentage passes, and then they got the other side of the football where they're pretty good, and they maybe have one of the best to ever do it. Currently in the midst of one of the greatest heaters I've seen a pass rusher ever have, and just rely on them to kind of close the door.
It's going to be interesting. Rainy weather. Brock Purdy's got a career QBR of 49.1 in rain or snow conditions. He's not played well. Let's talk a little bit about the star of the show, and that's the Browns defense. Unbelievably, the 49er defense has given up fewer points per game than the Browns defense. I thought that was one of the great statistical oddities in recent memory, because the Niners defense is not very good. But this Browns defense is really good. And let's talk a little bit about them. Jim Schwartz is the coordinator. He owns Shanahan. I think Shanahan might be 1-8 against the wide 9 and Schwartz. We know about Garrett. The guy, Garrett had 3 sacks last week. They had 20 hits on the quarterback last week against the Raiders, 10 sacks. But he's not doing it alone, is he? Mason Graham, Malik Collins, this kid Schlesinger in the middle is just a monster as a run defender. Denzel Ward's damn good. Talk to me a little bit about this base 4-3 wide 9 that Schwartz runs.
Well, I mean, it starts with the defensive line with Miles obviously on one end, but Malik Collins, who 49er fans are obviously familiar with, and Mason Graham in the middle. I think that's really where it starts, because those guys get pressure up the middle. They've really kind of wrecked some teams up the middle of the pocket. And that's sort of forced the quarterback backwards. That's allowed Miles to get to him. It's allowed guys like Isaiah McGuire and Cam Thomas to get to him. And then, Collins himself, I mean, he's having a great year. He's getting the quarterback that, they had 10 sacks of Geno Smith last week. Miles has 13 sacks in the last 4 games alone, which is an NFL record. Right conditions, I know Brock Purdy gets the ball out quick, and Trent Williams is there, and he's a Hall of Famer, and Miles is going to go against him, so that's going to make it more difficult. But, a 5-sack day, and he's got the record NFL single season record off of himself. So, but it's a typical Schwartz defense. It's aggressive, it's attacking. Schlesinger has been just an absolute eye opener as the first pick of the second round. And then Denzel Ward, you mentioned Denzel Ward. They made a trade since Greg Newsome to Jacksonville for Tyson Campbell. And Tyson's played really good opposite Denzel. So that's given That gets you two solid corners, and then Grant Delpit at safety has sort of been all over the place, making plays, playing some of his best football, I think, since they drafted him out of LSU in 2020. So I just think it fits Jim Schwartz's mindset. This defense, it's aggressive, it's attacking, it's we're going to go at you, and dang the torpedoes, full speed ahead, and a lot of when they're on, they're amazing. But you mentioned the points they've allowed, and I think some of that's when they talk complimentary football. I think part of that is just being on the field so much. You get in games where just sort of you can only hold on to the rope so long when the offense is going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out.
Yep.
And that's where you see those games. They had one in Baltimore week 2. They had one in New England. They had one in Detroit. It's just that's just the I think that's sort of a byproduct of a bad offense complementing them. But when they're on, they are absolutely electric and elite.
Let's hammer down on a couple of these guys. First of all, Garrett. Garrett's a monster. He's probably one of the most physically dominant players in the history of the league. I mean, he's 6'5", 280, and he runs in the 4.5s. I mean, he's Bruce Smith, but with greater length and maybe a little bit more speed. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but that's how great this kid is, or kid. I mean, he's great. He's a veteran now. What are the common denominators? How are teams defending Garrett? Are they letting their left tackle go one-on-one? Are they chipping him? Are they doubling him? What's the plan of attack against Garrett? I would imagine Trent's going to get a lot of one-on-one because he is a Hall of Famer, but Garrett's so much in his prime that I think they may even give Trent help in this game. How are teams going at Garrett? What are they trying to do to him?
I think Lamar Jackson said it well a couple of weeks ago. He said they had to throw as many hands and objects at Miles to slow him down. And that's basically it, because teams have thrown everything at him. Chips. There was a play, I think it was the Packers. It was almost a conga line of blockers. It's like Miles went from one, it was like a ballroom dancing or something. He went from one blocker to the next blocker to the next blocker. They're throwing everything at him. He even said today, he said that, he absolutely respects the heck out of Trent Williams and thinks the world of him and looks forward to this matchup. But he's like, I'm sure they're going to throw some chips. They're going to throw some double teams. They're going to throw a lot of things. And I also think Cleveland's going to move Garrett around. They're going to try to find they're moving him around as much as they've moved him around at any point in his career, because they know that, if you just lock him up against Trent Williams, a guy like Kyle Shanahan, a great offensive staff like that, they're going to figure out ways to kind of neutralize him, especially with Brock's ability to get rid of the football quick. So I would expect them to move him around, but Miles has seen everything. And one-on-ones, it was funny, a few weeks ago, they went to New England and Will Campbell was still healthy, the rookie number 4 pick out of LSU.
Yeah.
And I remember asking Miles, I'm like, how did New England block you? And he goes, they let Will block me one-on-one quite a bit more than I thought they would. And even Miles only set the single game sack record for the franchise with 5. But, that's the rare occasion, though. Most of the times there's going to be multiple people, you're going to see a lot of things thrown at him and a lot of objects, for lack of a better term, thrown at him. And it's what you have to do, because I legitimately think he's having as good a season as any defensive player has ever had in the NFL right now. I mean, it's not just the sacks, it's the stopping the run, it's the tackles for loss. It's just, he has become an all-around defensive football player. And it would be an absolute stunner if he wasn't Defensive Player of the Year for the second time in a row. And he's obviously on his way to Canton.
Yeah. No, somebody asked me a few months ago about Garrett, and I said, well, you know what? Defensive line is a technique-rich position. And so it's rare that the youngest guys come into the league are good. Usually it's guys. That's why guys can still sack the quarterback and still be effective on the D-line, like Calais Campbell, sometimes for decades. Sometimes they have a long career because it's so technique rich. Now you get a guy like Garrett who's got off the charts, unprecedented, like physical gifts and attributes. Now you have all that institutional knowledge. Now he knows exactly where to place his hands and in what sequence and what moves to give when and exactly how to leverage and all these different things that he's learned. And he is absolutely unstoppable. And for people who haven't seen him, 14 sacks for Myles Garrett in his last 5 games. It's the most sacks in a 5-game stretch in the history of the NFL since sacks were first tabulated in 1982. So, I mean, this guy is, whatever you want to think of. Richard Dent, Deacon Jones, Bruce Smith, Reggie White, whatever you think of as the greatest, this guy is as good or better than any of them. Couple last thoughts before we let you go. Let's talk about a couple of these other guys. The Browns had options there at the top of the first round, and they went with Mason Graham. And some people criticize that, especially when Graham kind of looked pudgy and a little out of shape at the mini camp and OTAs. And it's like, somebody was like, showed me something. It was like, this guy sucks. Look at this from the OTAs. I'm like, bro, it's OTAs. I mean, it's OTAs. This is one of the best defensive linemen in the country the last couple of years at Michigan. He is an instructional video on how to play, and he's got a great motor. What's Graham looked like? And the other guy I got to get your thoughts on is Mike Hall, because I loved Mike Hall at Ohio State. I know he had the domestic violence issue, and that probably hasn't necessarily gone away. It's kind of derailed him to some degree, but now he's in their plan. Talk to us about those two guys, because they're both, Garrett's a dominator, but these guys can dominate in their own right, and I think probably at some point will.
Let's start with Mason, because I think he's coming off the best game of his career. And, now Jim Schwartz told us this week, he goes, I think his best game's still ahead. But as far as games he's played, the game he played against the Raiders was fantastic. Collapsing the pocket. There were multiple occasions where he was just a split second late from being the guy to get the sack. And instead, it's hard to beat Myles Garrett to the quarterback. So, you give the rookie. He said he told us, he goes, I'll contribute a couple of sacks to Myles if that's what if it's a good cause of him breaking the sack record. But no, Mason's gotten better, but I think it's just comfort level also. Playing a more attacking style than what he was playing at Michigan, where he's more gap sound. Fill up gaps, let the linebackers make plays. As for Mike Hall, it's just been Mike's problem has been staying on the field, whether it was, you mentioned the domestic violence that cost him 6 games or 5 games. And then he had knee injuries last year that extended into this year. And, he's coming off, I would argue, one of his best games against the Raiders, where, he was in on a sack. He had another sack that was another play where he made a tackle for loss that was originally credited as a sack, but it was the sack was taken away, but the TFL wasn't. So I think Mike's starting to get comfortable, and I think as he gets rest, much like with Mason, you almost have to look at Mike as, almost in like an extended rookie season because of the time he missed last year. So I think you're starting to see the light come on with him, and it's going to be fascinating this last month how he kind of the trajectory he kind of goes on heading down the stretch.
How about Malik Collins? I mean, there are a lot of 49er fans that are really hacked off that the Niners allowed Leonard Floyd and Malik Collins to just kind of walk away in the offseason. They set those guys free, and they didn't need to. There wasn't a huge cap benefit to do so. And Collins went to Cleveland, and he's been good, hasn't he?
He's been fantastic. And more than anything, what him and Mason have been able to do together, sort of a combination, has really, I think, helped contribute to what Myles has been the season Myles has been able to have, because while you still give extra attention to Myles, what those guys are doing in the interior is just you almost throw your hands up at some point, because it's like, well, what can we do? We got this guy, but Malik's been a leader in that room. Malik's been a guy who's, he's making plays. I think he had 2.5 last week, sacks that is, against the Raiders. I mean, he's been all over the place, and it's been an amazingly big signing for this football team that's, I think, sort of tied the defensive line together. It's kind of in the way Dalvin Tomlinson did, if you remember, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The last time San Francisco came here, what Tomlinson did in 23, I think Malik is doing even at a higher level, to be perfectly honest, this season for that defensive line.
Couple last ones. Alex Wright and Aiden Huntington. I really liked Huntington in college. I thought that was a great get. And Alex Wright was good at UAB. Are those guys too hurt to go? Are they both out for this game?
Yeah, they're both out, which is a shame because, and Alex, it's just been a shame because it's every time he just starts to get going, injury like this comes up and puts him on the sideline for a while. But and then Aiden, like you say, Huntington has been a guy who on both sides of the football has helped because he's been key in the short yardage jumbo packages. So, but they're not going to be able to go. They've already been ruled out. So, but they are guys that this Aiden, Alex just got an extension. So they're guys this organization definitely thinks very highly of for the future.
One guy I got to get your thoughts on is one of my favorite football players, and he's out and he's been out all year, and I don't know what his future holds, but I'm a big Notre Dame fan. I love watching Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I thought Owusu-Koramoah was one of the best players in football until he suffered the neck injury. I know he's on the PUP. There's been all kinds of speculation about his future. Does he have a future? Is he going to retire? This is one of the NFL's best linebackers, and it's amazing. He was healthy. He's healthy. One play later, he's got a neck problem, and his career is dangling by a thread. What can you tell us about JOK?
He's been around. He's been a great mentor for Carson Schlesinger, but as far as it's my opinion that I think we've seen the last of him on the field. I hope I'm wrong because he was just rounding into a form where he was going to be I think he was going to be one of the best linebackers in the sport. And if you teamed him up with Schlesinger, my goodness, what you could do with those two guys. And
amazing.
I mean, it would. It's just a real disappointment. But more than anything, you just want JOK to get healthy, and I think that's the biggest thing is he's got to worry about his health. And if he decides and they decide that he can still play, we'll see him in 26. But I'm going to be one of those that until I see it, my guess is it unfortunately is not going to trend that way.
Yeah, it's a brutal game, man. It's an unbelievable game. Last one for you, and we really appreciate your time. Stefanski is thought to be a really good offensive coach. He's won a Coach of the Year, I think, and he's thought to be, a lot of people think very highly of Kevin Stefanski. Andrew Berry's got a good reputation as well, but this Watson deal put this franchise in a weird situation. What is the status of the regime of Berry and Stefanski? Are these guys on the hot seat and somebody's coming for their head, or will they be given time to kind of rebuild this thing post Watson?
Okay, there's two different perspectives. The fans have their seat absolutely sizzling. I mean, both those guys' seats are absolutely sizzling. I don't know if inside the organization though that's the way, because I think Jimmy Haslam came out of the owners' meetings last year and he said, look, Watson was a big swing and miss, and that's on us. And it seems like, at least publicly, he is giving Berry and Stefanski a mulligan, the biggest mulligan in the history of sports.
Yeah, I'd say.
On the Watson trade. So now see how the season ends. Could something change if the last month is just awful and they end up 3-14 again? Maybe, but I think Jimmy is committed he likes these guys personally. He thinks these guys have done a good job professionally, and he's taking the brunt of the Watson thing on himself. So, and he said it's a multi-year process. Well, they're just early in this multi-year process. This is sort of the first year of the multi-year process. So until I hear otherwise, and I think you'll see them in 26. But again, this last one's going to play a big role in whether they come back or not.
Awesome stuff, Chris. Give us a prediction on your way out the door. What do you think of the game? How do you see this one?
This is one I'm probably flipping a coin on, and just because the weather is such a factor. the defense for the Browns is such a factor. I went 1917 49ers, but that's just because the way the 49ers have been consistently able to win some of these games this year. I think I'll go that way, but if you told me it ended up with the Browns winning, I wouldn't be surprised. But the 1917 is the 49ers is the one I officially went with.
Yeah, you know what? I think you got it pegged. I really do. I think it's a low scoring, messy, ugly kind of a game. I think the Niners find a way to get a win. I don't feel confident in it, but it just seems like there's so many people doubting Brock Purdy. He's really good when he's doubted. And I think somehow, some way he finds a way to finish that game. I'll say 20-17 Niners, but I think it'll be close. Chris, awesome stuff. And we should tell people Chris is a great follow on X at C Easterling ABJ on X. He's been covering the Browns for the Akron Beacon Journal and does a great job doing it. And Chris, thanks for jumping on KNBR and giving us kind of a thumbnail sketch of the matchup. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Larry.
Chris Easterling, we got more straight ahead. It's 49er forecast on a Saturday on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. faithful 49ers forecast with Larry Krueger now continues on your proud home of 49ers football. KNBR, the sports leader.
And we're coming down the home stretch on 49er forecast, and I want to do a whole segment on Roger Craig. We'll have to hold off on that until Monday or Tuesday. That's going to do it for us. Quick hour. Man, it came and it went. JD's up next with Just Dubs. He'll talk a lot about the Warriors, a lot of talk about Kuminga, where he could be going. Sounds like New Orleans wants him. Indiana may want him. So JD's up next, and he'll talk a little Dubs basketball. And then JD and Copes go tomorrow morning for Niner pregame. I will join them for a segment in the pre and the postgame show. We'll have lots of Niner coverage all day tomorrow. So thanks to everybody for jumping in. Thanks to Raf for producing. Thanks to Chris Easterling for being our guest. And we'll go with our 49er stat of the day. How about this? The 49ers have $103 million in dead cap and over $66 million in player contracts on the injured reserve. The 49ers are 8-4 with nearly $170 million of money on their cap, doing not a whole lot for them. Shows how deep they are as a franchise and how deep they are as a roster to be able to have that much dead cap and that many guys, that much money on the IR and still be 8-4. Maybe it speaks to their easy schedule, but it probably speaks to their depth as well. All right, that's going to do it for us. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. A lot of good college football. Enjoy JD. He's next on the Sports Leader.